Okay. So hopefully, so last week we kind of go over the flow, right? That everybody has, right? And to me, that flow is very, very important because all of a sudden, if we know our emotions are generated by triggers, then when somebody yelling at us, right, we won't be, honestly, we will not be affected by the emotions. We're going to go past that and say, you're angry with me, okay? And because triggers are persistent, okay, they're protective and they're global, right? So we will not take it personally because otherwise it's so easy to take other people's emotion very, very personally. It's like you always treat me like this. The trigger, I represent certain triggers. I represent certain attribute that triggers this person's inner triggers. Right? So all of a sudden we are not, it's actually very interesting. Then the sense of sympathy just goes way down. Like my daughter, Emily actually drew this, right? And she yelled at me several times, like, Dad, can you just sympathize with me right now? I said, I can't. I don't see I'm not affected by your emotions. I know you have a lot of pain, you feel a lot of suffering, and you're very emotional at this point, but all I see is these triggers, okay? All I see is your heart of gold. I'm connecting, I'm not a very good person, I'm not very good at comforting you, but I'm very good at loving you, okay? So once we know, emotions are just messages that, if we hate and if we are in panic attack, if we're extremely emotional, that just means we have a lot of energy that needs to come out. And like anger is the protector of our boundaries, right? So if we have anger, that means we have the chance to resolve or restore or rebuild our boundaries. If we don't have anger, we actually need to get anger to be evoked. Okay, so in this clinic, having a good amount of anger is actually very important because otherwise we can't, nothing can be done. Anger is part of courage, and courage is actually needed to resolve what's already within us. Okay. So today, what I want to talk about is the guiding principles that I use in this clinic. Okay, so that's what I do with everybody. Okay, that's what I do with myself. Okay, so we have the left and right brain, and this is at the conscious level, right? So if we draw a little line here, up here is conscious level where we know what's going on. Okay, and over here it's to me it's the subconscious level. Okay, where the only way we have access to this is through emotion and through this rigidity of like this hand just want to do something, I don't know why. Okay, so people went through trauma. They were pinned down, for example. They can't move. This hand it's not right. Okay, or people play violin for 2 years and they really hate it. This entire shoulder complex. It's just tight, okay, rigid, okay, it holds a lot of stuff. So when people talk about like the body remembers, okay, this is how the body remembers, okay. We want to resist, but we can't, right? So, and it's so primitive, the reptilian brain commands, if it's not executed, it's pending, right? So we have ways to release it, right? But there is some requirement. The requirement is actually these. Our perspective, right? Our conscious perspective of this world needs to be modified, right? Because otherwise, we have so much conflict within our own perspective, actually. Okay. Okay. So for me, it's really just 4 principles, okay, or 4 beliefs, if you will. So there's loving kindness. And it's all the time, everywhere, So we're actually never alone. We may feel we're disconnected and we feel lonely, but we're actually never alone, because loving kindness is all, it's within us and it's without us. Okay, it's everywhere. Okay, the only thing we have to do is to say, there's loving kindness. And it's all around me and it's all within me. Okay? So if we deviate from this, then boom, all of a sudden there's fear, right? There's a sense of we're not safe, that we are alone, we're lonely, okay? Nobody cares, and there's a whole bunch of stuff start to get generated if we don't have this belief that loving kindness is omnipresent. Okay? It's all the time, constantly. It's like air. We don't feel, we don't see air, but their air is always around us. Right? So to me, lots of our insecurity and really just come from this very simple principle. Okay. Even people who are highly religious, it's like, oh, I pray, or I bow, or I meditate, or right? It's almost like if I pray, then I have a connection with the higher power, right? Or if I chant, then I have a connection. No, it's always there, constantly. Okay, so we will not feel like, okay, I pray or I chant or I meditate and it's not there yet. I don't have an answer. No, you may not have an answer, but we're always surrounded by this beautiful energy. Okay. The next thing is purpose. Okay, so it's like everything has a purpose. I have a purpose. Okay, so this is really coming out of this. Honestly, to me, it's like this is the guiding principle. And these three are just part of this. Okay, they're. It's almost like the guiding principle, loving kindness, is the top of the stool, and these three are just the three legs of that stool. Okay, and with that we can sit up. Okay, so with the loving kindness everywhere, and we can always connect to it, right? Then the sense of purpose start to come up. It's like there's a purpose. I have a purpose. I may not know what my purpose is, but I have a purpose. Okay, I may be the smallest blade of grass, in the giant forest. My entire lifetime I would not be able to generate as much oxygen as the big tree, in 1 second even, right? But I have a purpose. Okay. And when do I have a purpose, right? I have purpose at any point, any time, okay? Not because I'm healthy, not because I'm young, not because I have fair, whatever, right? I have a purpose at any point, any time, any condition, okay? This to me is so important in my clinic, okay? People come in with cancer, Parkinson, chronic pain, loss of loved ones, and PTSD, and right? I say, and then they say, okay, when I get over this, I have a purpose. No, you have a purpose right now. Right now, okay? And this is so related to channels, okay? Because channels runs in an instant, right? People, cancer patient comes in and say, okay, I'm a cancer survivor. I say, okay, this will be the very last time you use the word survivor. Okay? You're going to, from this point on, you're going to use the word thrive instead of survive. Okay? When they do that, their channels instantly get better. They feel better, right? Just the thought of thriving. Okay? They may have scars around here, which scars are, channels are electrical in nature, and scars are higher resistance. So, for example, the liver channel doesn't really pass through. Okay, so for cancer patients, for example, breast cancer, and then we have scars here. The first thing they feel is that they can't breathe. Why? Because the liver channel couldn't pass through this physically into the lung channel. So breathing become not automatic, right? There's a lot of. Once we understand, channels are really electrical, and scars are keloid tissues that are higher resistance, and all of a sudden scar treatment it just falls out. Okay, so once we know, And so if we feel we have a purpose, right? So instead of saying, okay, there's a huge sense of injustice in our mind, right? We have so much resistance, and when we resist, we actually affect our channels, okay? When we don't like, for example, if what I'm presenting is really, really boring and you really don't want to be here, your Ren channel is actually here, okay? Your Do channel is actually not coming up because we are like, okay, I really don't want to be here, right? But I have to be here, right? But if we change our mind or change our thought and say, okay, I have a purpose, I really don't like this person, or I really don't like this person's perspective, but I'm sitting here and I'm trying to understand why would this person tell me this? Why would this person tell me there's evil qi and that we have to protect ourselves? Okay? And I will observe this person and say, okay, you have evil, you believe there's evil qi, coming out of cancer patients or people in menstruation even, right? And you should not stand in front of the head or the feet or somewhere, near this person's body. Okay, how are you? Are you doing well? Okay, how are your channels? Okay, if we feel, so that we, in Chinese medicine, liver qi stagnation, right? If I feel there's evil qi in this room, or the patients that are coming in and say, oh, okay, this person has evil qi, we got to protect ourselves. We actually are in the mode of liver qi stagnation because we're protecting ourselves, okay? Our Ren channel and our Du channels are actually in the protective mode. It's not free-flowing, it's not connecting through loving kindness to the other person, right? So it's actually very interesting how, these four little principles actually kind of, it's like there's a huge conflicting things in there, right? But if we start to pull this, right, we start to say, okay, there's clarity. Okay, we start to clear, we start to make choices of what we keep in this knowledge bank. Okay, it's not like everything that comes in, we just take it, right? Or this person has 30 years, 40 years, 10,000 years of experience, and we have to trust this person. So purpose, right? So everything has a purpose. My cancer patients, okay, I actually don't have a whole lot of patients, but quite a few of my cancer patients, at some point they say, John, you know what? I really don't care how long I can live because I am living now. Okay, I'm connecting to my family in a way that I've never connected before. And to a certain degree, I know why I have cancer in the first place. Okay, so there's a lot of these things that get a person, to me, suffering is just alarm, okay, for us to say, okay, I'm going to start digging into this and really look at this, okay. Before COVID-19, I actually have a psychotherapist, I think, psychologist or psychotherapist, and came in and highly recommended, and I asked her, what can we do together? And she said, okay, you're highly recommended. The person said, I don't need to tell you anything. So I scanned her channel. I said, how's your digestion? Right? And she looked at me and it's like, how do you know it's my digestion? Right? So she has a condition that I didn't know at that time. And I just told her, it's like, okay, you are always in fight and flight mode. Okay, so channel has 4 modes: parasympathetic, sympathetic mode, okay, sleep and pause. Okay, so Western medicine recognize sympathetic, which is fight and flight or flee or freeze, and parasympathetic, which is rest and heal. Okay, so I told this therapist or psychologist and say, you are in very, very high degree of fight and flight. You're in very high degree of sympathetic mode. Okay, and when we're in fight and flight, we're not supposed to be able to digest. Right? We're not supposed to. So your symptoms make perfect sense, right? And then we go into this, right? And she has huge amount of triggers from her parents. she knows what to do. She's very responsible, but she doesn't. There's a lot of resistance, right? So it's very, very interesting. We have conflicting ideas. Like, okay, I'm the only daughter that really cared, but I really don't like my parents. I highly I'm very resentful of them or the things that they have done to me, right? So I have these conflicting things, and she actually said, it's like, she said, yeah, you're right. Every time I see my patient, I have to put my sympathy at the door and then walk in. I said, you can't do that, right? We can't separate these things, right? So if we put sympathy at the door, what it does is we walk in with apathy, which is basically sympathy. Right? It's a part of sympathy, right? It's like, I'm not going to sympathize with you. That's sympathy as well, right? So until we are truly connected in a different way, then we automatically are doing more compassion, right? And truly empathy. And then sympathy is, then we're free from sympathy. We're not suppressing our sympathy, right? We're not trying not to judge. We're not trying. It's not like we're not trying. It's like we're trying not to use our left and right brain, but because if we use our midbrain, then we automatically don't have to go through left and right brain. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Heart of gold. Okay. Everyone has a heart of gold. Okay. People ask me, it's like, okay, how about Hitler, right? How about this and this? How about child molesters? How about this and how about that? How about this and how about that? Okay. To me, they have heinous behaviors. Okay. But do they have a heart of gold? Okay. If they don't, do we have heart of gold? Okay. So to me, this is actually very key for me. Okay. In our eyes, right, if we use judgment, there's right and wrong behaviors, right? There's traumatic behaviors. They're extremely oppressive, violent behaviors, right? And there are words and behaviors from our parents that make us feel small or conditional or everything else, right? Then we start to suppress ourselves, right? So to me, everyone has a heart of gold is actually very, very key for my clinic, okay? Because without this connection, we cannot do reptilian brain command release. If we don't, let's say we experienced this trauma, if we cannot connect to that person's heart of gold and then punch or kick or poke this guy's eyes out, which we really want to do at the point of trauma, right? To me, if we're connecting in a different way, we'll never be free, because the whole goal is to reveal. Okay, not heal, but reveal. We all have a heart of gold. Okay, and to me, this is, again, this is not religion, right? But to me, this is what Jesus was here for. This is what Buddha was here for. That we're all light within, right? So we all have a heart of gold. Okay. So it's a revealing process, right? So not a healing process. Okay. Healing process implies that we can be hurt, damaged, broken, and everything else, right? Revealing basically says we can have all these triggers, right? So what's behind the trigger is really our heart of gold. Actually, within the trigger, within this emotional triggers and everything else, not just the trauma triggers, the protective triggers, but also all our wisdoms and all the good stuff, okay? All the good stuff and all the, well, I shouldn't say all the good stuff. It's like all the stuff, right? And they are now organized, right? That's why, it's like, okay, I don't know what to do, and I sleep through the night, and the next morning I know what to do. Okay, it takes time to go through this, this thing and really find the stuff we need, right? Where things, in the conscious are a little bit more organized, right? Yeah. Okay. So we all have a heart goal, right? The next thing is choice. We all have a choice. Okay. At any time we have a choice, right? And this is, again, I'm not religious, right? But Jesus on the cross choose to continue to love unconditionally. Okay. Buddha did the same thing. Okay. So it's a choice. Okay. People from Nazi concentration camps, 99.999% people, are in misery, but there's a very, very small amount of people that actually connected differently, right? And they come out, really enlighten the world, right? Because they exercise their choice of connection. Okay, they actually connect differently to their guards, their soldiers, right? The people who are, really try to kill them, just like Jesus on the cross, to all the Roman soldiers, right? They connect differently. They are not connecting to people's behaviors and words and actions. They're connecting to their heart of gold. Okay, yeah. So this is honestly how I, people went through trauma. Okay, if they're willing to do this with courage, right? Again, it's choice. Choice is a courage. Okay, it's not easy to change, what's already built. Okay. But with these 4 guiding principles, to me that's quite a few of my patients, honestly, they do this, right, and they actively changing their knowledge bank, right, changing their life, changing their perspective, right, yeah. So in the clinic, when we work on channels, okay, channels can be felt because it's like electrical. Okay, when people are, basically I say, okay, let's just try it. Okay, let's try it for 60 seconds. Okay, connect to your heart, right? You have a purpose. From here you connect to loving kindness, and from loving kindness you connect to your dad's heart of gold, for example. And for just 60 seconds, from your heart, start with this. Dad, I love you unconditionally. Dad, I love you unconditionally. Okay. That 60 seconds may have like 3 segments. Okay. The first segment is like, okay, it's like, there's no way I can do this. Right? There's a lot of resistance in the first segment. Okay. And then, there's a lot of emotion, okay? Because once we connect through loving kindness, there's no suppression anymore, okay? It's just, there's a lot of emotion come out, okay? And then the next 30 seconds or 20 seconds is just absolutely calmness, peace, okay? Most of us, when we resist our parents and we say we hate them, okay, and we try to escape, we try to, forgive, forget, run away, hide, move as far away to them as possible. It's based on our triggers, okay? They did something that's conditional that make us feel small or bad or whatever, right? But at the same time, we also have triggers to say, I love my dad. Okay, I want this unconditional connection with my dad. We all do, right? So we all have these triggers within us that want intimacy, but at the same time resist intimacy. Right? So that makes perfect sense, right? So a person from a so-called broken family, right? The parents are divorced and they, went through a rough childhood. or alcoholic family, right? You would think like, okay, if I come out of alcoholic family, I should know firsthand alcoholics are devastating for a family. But my chance of being alcoholic are extremely high, right? And people from so-called broken or divorced families, their divorce rates will be high, right? Why? Because they have conflicting triggers. They want to have a very cohesive, very harmonious family, but at the same time, they cannot trust people, right? If we cannot trust our parents, how can we trust anybody else, right? So this, so in the clinic, this is what I do, okay? Is really what I recommend, right? Is, I have a purpose. That means everything I've gone through has a reason. Everything, right? And I may or may not know the reason, but there's a reason. Okay, I'm just going to assume there's a reason, right? And I have a heart of gold. I have a purpose, right? And I'm making this choice through loving kindness. I'm going to connect to my dad's or my mom's heart of gold, and I'm just going to love them unconditionally. I don't know what that means, but I am going to do that. Okay? So the interesting thing about this is, from a channel standpoint, right? If we believe, which is our perspective, that life is not safe, okay, then our pericardium channel have to lock up. Okay, our liver cannot go through and supply our, we cannot thrive because it's not safe. We have to look out. We have to be nervous. Okay, we have to be in some kind of a fight and flight. Okay. Moreover, our heart channel that's supplied by spleen, okay, the spleen channel come up, go underneath here, nourish our heart, and then heart channel continues to our little finger, and then small intestine go through around here, and get us to make good choices. Okay. So, if we don't trust people, we cannot. Our heart is not. How should I say this? We know what to do, but we can't really feel it, because we need to have this gap or space or buffer from another person, right? So the spleen channel that's supposed to support our heart, and when the heart is full of energy, it's just loving and kind, okay? Heart is always in the present time. Heart knows suffering. Left and right brain doesn't. Left and right brain is in charge of our survival, basically, okay? So there's no evil parts in here, okay? It's just how we're wired, okay? So by actively changing our belief system, okay? And again, I always ask people to try it, okay? Don't take this as truth or something like that. Try it, okay? If it works for you, great. Okay? If it doesn't work for you, just throw it away, okay? Try it for 2 weeks and see what happens, right? So these four beliefs, right? And I use it as my daily practice. When I walk, I try to do that. When I talk, I do that. Okay. When I connect to people, I do that. And when I hear things, right, or even the things when I read a book or when I hear other people talk, I always want these are my sort of my filters, right? If they match this, or whether they match this or not, to me, it's very, very important. Okay, and I think everybody means well. Okay, we all try to solve our suffering or some kind of an issue that we see, right? But these four, because the path is different. Okay, whether we take the path of revealing our true nature, which is heart of gold, which is light, right, which is love, right, or are we healing broken, or are we broken that we need to heal, right? So then one path is more like a lighthouse. It's like, okay, I'm just going to maintain my inner light, right? And the other one is like candle in the wind, where I need to control the environment around me, right? So it's very, very different. Okay, yeah. So what this does is really to bring our focus and energy, right, into ourselves, right? Instead of saying, okay, the outside, you know, from years ago or lifetimes ago are still affecting me, right? We start to go inside and say, wow, you know, where do I focus on this, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's basically the left and right brain, okay? And this, again, this affects our channels. Okay? The midbrain, to me, is very, very interesting. There isn't a whole lot to talk about it, right? Because it doesn't, to me, the midbrain is just connected to the heart, okay? There is actually a Heart Math Institute, okay, that says, have you heard of this? Right. So basically there's a resonance of our heart, right? And there's a resonance in the midbrain, and they connect through resonance, okay? And because of this resonance, which through the pericardium membrane, okay, so our pericardium surround the heart is actually both a transmitter and a receiver. We can actually do this with other people, okay? So these are actually doable, okay? And, you know, to me, these are not magical, but it makes sense, right? Because there's a resonance, okay? So the midbrain connection to heart is really just that, okay? If we feel like I connect to loving kindness and my whole being is full of loving kindness, then we're good. That's it, okay? And the midbrain's energy is supported by the do channel. Okay? So when a person doesn't feel safe, and we do emotional control like EQ, okay, we want to manage our emotions, what it does, okay, so in the midbrain we have thalamus. Thalamus is to feel our internal state, okay, both physically and emotionally, okay. So the best way to not feel the emotion or manage our emotion is actually to suppress the midbrain, is to suppress our do channel, okay. So I mean, from a channel standpoint, this makes perfect sense, okay. And unfortunately, when we separate emotions into good or bad, right, and stuff like that, right, we also we start to move away from feeling our emotions. You know, it's more like, okay, this is who I am, but that's not really who you are. Okay. So the midbrain to me is just this one simple question that I use. Okay, what's the most important thing I can do right now? And that's it. Okay, I honestly, I don't do anything else with my midbrain. Okay, if I receive something, if I, you know, like one time I got this text and say, okay, John, I got 3 weeks to live. Okay, I look at this text and say, oh, I don't know what to do. Right? I was in the middle of a street, and I basically stop, look at the text, and I look at the sky. It's like, what's the most important thing I can do right now? And then I was just standing there, okay? Maybe 10, 15 seconds later, I got this clarity, hold his hands. Okay. So then the text back is, I want to hold your hand, tell me when. Okay, if you don't reply this within 24 hours, I'm going to kick your door open because I know where you live. Okay, yeah. Then I actually, you know, we arranged a time. I went and held his hand for like an hour, connecting to loving kindness. And we make an arrangement to say, okay, I'm going to visit you, you know, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 11 o'clock. Okay, in the morning, whether you're awake or whatever, right, until you die. So I went back 2 days later. His wife opened the door and he said, he passed away yesterday afternoon, sitting in the couch where we held hands without a sound. You know, the wife and the son was actually like right in the kitchen talking to in-house nurse. I was actually so happy. I was like, you know, he didn't live for 3 weeks, barely lived for a week, right? So what's the most important thing we can do right now? Okay. When we ask this question, the left and right brain it cannot take this question. It doesn't know what that means, okay? Now means there's no history, okay? Most empowering is not right or wrong, okay? So midbrain takes the question, okay? And when midbrain takes the question, it goes into the subconscious, right? There's no logic to it, right? It goes into the heart, goes into the subconscious, and come up with clarity. There's no reason for it, okay? It's like, hold his hands at this stage, what would it do, right? You know, I've talked to acupuncturists, they are like supporting, you know, like terminal EO cancer patients, right? They're still cooking, you know, herbs, they're still cooking this, and they're still, you know, doing things, try to improve the other person's health or whatever, right? And to me, it's like, yeah, you're doing the right thing, but is it the most empowering, right? For you and for the other person, right? Again, we all have our own truth, right? But when oftentimes our truth is based on right and wrong and not based on, you know, how we truly feel, right? Yeah. Okay, so the midbrain is, to me, is super important, but it's super easy to do. Okay, it makes absolutely no sense, right? What's the most empowering thing I can do right now? It's just that one simple question. Okay, and all of a sudden we I'm often, you know, people tell me like, John, you know, that solution or that the thing that you come up with are like, how did you come up with this? I said, I don't know. Because I really don't know. Okay, the treatment I have in the clinic is not, I really don't know. You know, people come in and say, okay, I have this pain, and I look at it and I ask, like, how many accidents have you had any accidents? Say, oh yeah, I've got like 24 car accidents, right? I said, I'm not going to treat this. Period. Okay. You have other issues that you have to resolve first. Okay, your world is not safe. Okay, we need to resolve that first. Right? I'm not treating your leg at all. I'm not treating your pain at all. Okay. So with this diagram, right, with this and with this, you know, what's the most important thing I can do right now, right? I'm not going to do what's right. You know, if Mr. Perez, Nestor comes in, right, and we do the right thing, right, he will still be the same, right? Yeah. Okay, so midbrain, super important. To me, you know, this oftentimes is highly resisted, okay, by the left and right brain, because we think, you know, from a left and right brain standpoint, our issues are complicated. That's why we need very complicated solutions. Okay, but that's not the case. Cool. Okay, so in the limbic brain, it's really about honoring our emotions. Okay, and describe it without, you know, ideally with a pen and paper. Okay, you know, have a full notebook, just describe how we feel. It's like, man, I really hate this person, right? Or I really feel jealous, or you know, such injustice to me. Okay, just describe it. Okay, when we honor it, describe it, and we use this, what's the most important thing I can do right now? Right, we're actually embracing this message, you know, that's coming out of the emotion, right? And then potentially we have access to our triggers, and all of a sudden it comes back with an answer or clarity, right? And boom, that trigger is actually resolved. Okay, yeah. So again, triggers are persistent, right? So actually go through, in my opinion, lifetimes after lifetimes after lifetimes. This is not just, it's not like, okay, we die and we don't have these triggers anymore. In the next lifetime, we begin our new triggers, okay? So to me, they are persistent, okay? We may not believe in lifetimes after lifetimes, but to me, they're very persistent, at least through this one lifetime, okay? And they are global, right? And they're protective, so they are not evil, okay? So the emotional management or control or whatever, right, EQ stuff, right, is all based on their good emotion or bad emotion, right? There's no good emotion, there's no bad emotion, okay? Yeah. All emotions, like all the channel modes are necessary for our survivals, okay? Yeah. The question is, are they still relevant? That's the only question, okay? Yeah. The reptilian brain command release. Normally I do this after a person is willing and have tried and have experienced the benefit of connection through loving kindness. Okay, they are willing to do it. They have done it and they experience the benefit of it. Okay, and they're willing to honor their emotions, right? They're willing to do what's most empowering, right? And one of the questions is like, why would I want to do this for that animal, basically? Okay, that person really traumatized me. Why would I want to connect to that person's heart of gold? Why would I want to do this for the other person, right? We're not doing this for the other person. We're doing this for ourselves, okay? Because that's, when we look at it, for us to reveal our true nature, for us to reconnect to our heart of, that's fully capable of loving unconditionally, right? It's for us. Okay, it's not for the other person. We may never change the other person, but we can absolutely change ourselves. Okay, so to me, these are things that we can do, right? From a brain standpoint, okay? And all this will change our thought. We'll start to, make a difference in our thoughts, okay? And physically, for our body, okay, in this clinic, what I do is 3, 2, 1, okay? 3 is underneath our feet. We have 3 points that I do, okay? So if this is a foot, okay, so basically there's one point here, another point here, and here's the heel, here's like this, okay? Not in the dead center of our heel, but a little bit in front, okay? It's almost like we have a little foot inside a big foot, okay? Yeah, it looks like a dog, huh? So that's the 3, okay? So when we stand, if we can say, okay, are my weight evenly distributed along these 2 feet, right? And are they evenly along these 3 points? So if I have 6 scales underneath my feet, right? I would like them to be very, very similar, okay? I actually want to design a scale of, 6 scales, or 6 numbers. Let's see if this From a balance standpoint, right, if we get on this, or get on the skateboard, or get on something, right, we actually will feel it, right? So if my weights are here, I have to be tight, right? But it's actually very interesting. We can play with this and really feel it, okay? To me, body training, okay, balance and everything else actually affects our reptilian brain, okay, affects our reflex and a lot of these things, Okay, get us to reconnect back to our body. The body intelligence start to come back up. Okay, so 3 is 3 points underneath the feet. 2 is the 2 of our sit bones. So when we sit, we want to feel our sit bones are even. Okay, because otherwise our spine will be off. Okay, if our people drive, like my daughter, I was working on her. She's like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? I said, oh, Dad, it must be when I drive. She's got a new car, so she spends time in the car. And when she's drives, she rests her hand on the whatever here, right? So she's off. I said, oh my goodness, we need to put thorns there, okay? And then she, basically I told her 2 points, okay? Sit bones, sit bones, sit bones, right? Very different. I actually have a cancer patient. She's a real estate agent. So every weekend, she does a lot of driving, right? And she said, oh, Dad, it's killing me. I say, it's your sit bones. Okay. So I actually wrote her a sticky note. It's like sit bones. And say, you just tape this on your steering wheel. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey. Come on in.
How's your toe?
Yeah, we're gonna look at that toe. Okay. So one is is run 1. Okay. So the perineum, right? This point is the origin of our Ren channel and our Du channel. Right? Ren channel and Du channel so we have 14 channels. Okay. Ren channel and Du channel are the only channel that's in the center. Okay. All the other 12 channels are bilateral. Right. So we have lung channel, we have 2 lung channels, 2 large intestine channels. So everything else is symmetrical. Right. Ren channel and Du channel are our center. Right. Everyone, all the living organism, is basically a tube. Right. So we have mouth, right, and we have anus, right. So basically we're all a tube, right. So the Ren channel basically runs in front of the tube and goes back in, okay, and the Du channel is in the back and then goes back in, okay. They all go up, okay. So in Qigong, right, they have this small heavenly circle or whatever, right. So the practice is most of the time, actually they reverse this as well, is like the Du channel comes up, okay, and then the channel goes down. Okay, then the Ren channel actually goes down and they circulate. So they draw a big circle like this, right? This going down, and honestly, I have Qigong teachers come to me highly depressed. And I said, this channel is supposed to go up. And they go like, what? We've been practicing like this for 20 years, and I teach this way, right? Honestly, if we just say, okay, this channel goes down, we automatically feel depressed. So Ren channel, so this perineum point, right, in between our genital and anus, is basically have a extremely slight elevation. Okay, it's like you elevate it ever so slightly. Okay. If you do that, sitting down or standing up, you actually feel this energy that just goes, front and back, and your spine just better. And your eyes are brighter, right? And this point can be, you just feel that there's energy right here that you can easily connect to anything you want. Okay. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, carry this with you. Okay, 3 is 3 points underneath the feet, right? 2 is your sit bones. When you sit, do you feel your sit bones? Feel your sit bones. Are they even? Okay? Like adjust and feel like, oh, wow, I'm actually one-sided. Okay? Then you find something else, then we find something we can do, that's empowering, right? And this 1 is actually, okay, everything you do that, you do it with your perineum point. Okay? If you want to walk, move that point first. Okay? Move that point first. Okay? If you want to hold, grab something, move that point and get your hands out. Okay, you avoid so much. Your movement will be so much more fluid. Okay, martial art, dance, Anything that's physical. Actually, one time there's a ballet dancer, he came to the clinic, right? We were talking and I was showing him stuff and I say, hey, can you do movement using that point, right? And he actually did. And he said, oh my goodness, my teacher's been telling me, been teaching me all these years. It's all about that one point. So now, when he does all the movements from that point, right, his hands are fluid. His entire body is different, right? You can actually sing with that point.
I don't go that far.
Yeah, yeah. So you're singing, you just feel that energy actually comes from that point, right? It's, Chinese, we talk about dantian, right? Like we have this diaphragm or this area that the energy, right? To me, it's really, to me, it's at one point. Okay, yeah. This one point, I actually use it for people with panic. Okay, people with severe panic attacks. Oftentimes, they're not in their body. So one of the treatment or one of the suggestion is actually for them to sleep with the finger, with their own finger touching ring 1, okay, and then go and go to sleep, okay. So basically, you want a sense like, okay, this point is touchable, and nothing happens, okay. Yeah. I honestly have, people went through sexual trauma. They did this and they feel so much better within days. Okay, yeah. So the body, right? So this is all about body. So our body is very similar to our emotions. Okay, we just need to connect to it, not dissociate from it. Right? So when we talk about EQ, to me, there's a certain level of dissociation. It's like, okay, oh, I like my body parts. I like my right side, but not my left side. It's the same thing, right? So the side we don't like, we dissociate from it. We disconnect from it, okay? So this 3, 2, 1, from a physical standpoint, from a body standpoint, is really how we begin to feel again, okay? Again, this may seem ridiculous, right? But if we pay attention to the 3 points, life is very interesting. You go anywhere, you have these 3 points. You stand in line and waiting for things. It's like, oh, how's my 3 points? Well, can I move all my weight into one leg? Wow, that 3 points is still there, right? So all of a sudden, we are not bored. I used to wait for my kids to whatever, right? And they say, Dad, you're going to wait for a long time. I said, you know what? I don't mind waiting. I got lots of things to do. I have a lot of things I can feel within myself. Okay? So from this 3, for example, I have hip injury, I have a back injury, I have a neck injury, right? So my balance is actually more towards the right. So once I have this concept of 3, 2, 1, right, and that's why I have a little bit of bunion on my left foot, okay, and why? Because my knee actually goes in, my left knee actually want to go in, and my hip actually want to come out this way, okay. For years, if I go down like this, I can hear the tendon here actually gets off, like, ting, ting, it wants to do that, okay. So by going back to this 3, 2, 1, right, I start to say, wow, that's interesting, okay. And when my left knee kind of go inwards a little bit, I actually collapse my arch on my left foot. Very, very interesting, okay.
This does it automatically, you're saying.
Right. So.
Without even thinking.
Yeah, but when we are mindful, right, so. When we have injury, the body compensates, and over time, we just like, okay, that's who I am, right? But when you go back to 3, 2, 1, and you start to notice that 3 points, you actually start to rearrange, our alignment. Okay, you may start to feel pain and everything else, right? But that's part of the healing process. If we're constantly compensating, one side of our body will always be tight. And tight muscle eventually is going to draw joints together, and in between joints, there are nerves, and we start to have nerve pains. Okay, yeah. So again, I mean, from a body standpoint, right? And people come to me and say, "Oh, I got this pain and chronic and da 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 da." I say, 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you can do 3, 2, 1 for a week, then we have something to talk about. Otherwise, I'm not going to treat you. I'd rather you have the pain, so you have all the motivation to really go into your body. It's not my work; it's your work. Okay, so that's the physical. Okay, so if we do this, honestly, our channels are maintained in the optimum fashion. Okay, what does that mean? It just means the channels moves based on what we need. Okay, so when people say, okay, the channels, oh, please come in. Okay, I've been waiting for you. No. Okay. So channels react to our environment. Okay, if a dog chases me, I need to activate my channel to run instantaneously, right? There's a lot of text. Okay, it's like, okay, our liver are thriving in spring. Okay. As if our channels change based on the weather. No. Okay. Our channels do change based on the weather, but it's why? Because the weather is a condition as well. Right? When it's cold, our channels automatically goes into the optimal flow to maintain whatever we need to maintain. Right? So So what it means is, okay, so am I in pure parasympathetic mode right now? No, I am not, right? Am I in sympathetic? So we have mixed modes, okay? So the channels are like, they don't have a predefined mode, but they move based on what's needed right now, okay? So the best channels is very reactive, and it doesn't stay when it's not needed anymore. Okay, that's what we call stuck channels. So channel modes can get stuck based on what? Based on how we see the world. Okay, you know, like soldiers, right? You go to fight a war and you come back, you're never the same. Why? Because war changed people's perspective. War changed people's triggers. They feel differently now, right? So when they come back, you know, it's like, okay, you're safe now. You don't need to fight anymore, da, 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 da. But they still don't feel safe because their worldview changed, right? And their triggers are installed differently. Okay, they've seen things, or they experienced things, or they, you know, whatever, right? And, you know, I got this dear friend, right? Known him for 14 years. PTSD, right? You know, to me, it's really, you know, these two, right? And then get his channels to get stuck in that, as if he's still in, you know, Baghdad, and his team is still being bombarded.
So you mean his channel is looping
Yeah.
in that?
Yes. So what happens, beautiful, right? So the looping part is, okay, so he was in Iraq two times, okay? And there were, you know, stuff like that, right? So all his senses, ear, you know, eye and da, right? And his body all felt this, right? And all these stimulus goes into the brain, okay? It goes through the reptilian brain where he does all his reflex, right? It's like, you know, always doing this. He come into my clinic, he walked out, he knows exactly where everything is, okay? He's hyper vigilant. He needs to know where things are, okay? and go through the limbic brain, right? So this comes in, goes through the reptilian brain first, because the reflex is the number one, right? From here to here, there is a 0.8 second, or some people say 0.2, but 0.2 to 0.8 second delay. Okay. So we go through the reptilian brain, go through, generate these commands if necessary, right? So stimulus comes in, generate these, things if necessary. Go through the limbic brain, generate these emotions, right? Which get us to move even, to move basically, right? Go through the midbrain. If the midbrain takes it, we do what's most empowering. If we don't, which we often do because we need to suppress our emotions, so midbrain is bypassed, right? Goes into the left and right brain, then we judge. Okay. So for a PTSD person, when they drive, they often get into road rage. Okay? Because when they're driving, there's a lot of stimulus come in, right? Go through this loop, and it's very similar to when they were in danger, right? And they judge and say, these are my enemies. So all of a sudden, they lock in all the cars, front and back, actually, right? They lock them in. That's what my PTSD friend described to me. It's like, you know what? I lock in them. All these cars are locked in. And then it generates these. Judgments, right? Emotions and commands, right? And change our channels, and all this actually gets feedback into our thought, into our body. So after that, we don't even need the external stimulus anymore, right? Because the thought and the body will actually feed into this again. So thoughts are so powerful. A person can 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, completely safe. Okay, the 3 sets of security system, and there's this in the house, and this person is highly trained and everything else. Can't sleep. Right? Can't sleep because the sense of danger is something's going to happen. We don't know when. We don't know where. So it's a 24/7 thing, right? So you see this, right? So past highly stimulate or highly traumatic event happens, it alter our worldview, perspective, install triggers, and generate this loop. So it comes into our thought, right? So we have to be hypervigilant. Right? It changes our body, we're tense, right? Change our channel modes, so we're always in fight and flight, maybe even more extreme, right? So when this is removed, this continues to feed, right? So the treatment, normal treatment, is to say what? Okay, is to dampen this, right? Dampen the thoughts. Right, with lithium or whatever, with drugs, slow people down. Right, so your thoughts are not so intense, right? And then the body, right? So this also goes, basically go to the body. Then what do you do here? You put sedation, right? You put whatever drugs to get them to, right? So basically, you sedate the nervous system, right? And you sedate, the physical system, which does nothing to this and does nothing to that, right? So my friend would say, you know what, John? I used to want to kill everybody and myself. Now I want to kill everybody and myself very slowly. Okay. So what I honestly, to me, I used to have PTSD clinics, okay, and I will when my mom passes away, because I wanna share with everybody, there's nothing wrong with their fear, with their vigilance. The real issue is they think that's wrong. It's not necessary. It's wrong for you to have, for you to live in that state. Okay? So all of a sudden it's like, okay, I got these real emotions, right? I got these real fear. I got this real perspective in my mind. These are all my truth, right? And the society says these are wrong. These people are highly trained, highly responsible, right? Highly dedicated. And all of a sudden, you change your environment, they're highly useless. They're highly destructive. Right? They're the best soldiers, but all of a sudden they're the worst civilians. Okay? What I really want to share is there's nothing wrong. It's just whether it's relevant or not. And how do we resolve that? How can we restore the sense that I can love and be loved again? How can I restore the sense that I'm not broken? To me, that's really the key. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So this is the model, okay, and I really use this model, and I continue to refine this model, right? So every case that I see, every condition that I see, okay. So physical, right? You come in with physical thing, but do you have other stuff? Absolutely, right? How do we get to this, right? Because the body eventually goes. That's guaranteed, right? But to me, honestly, the most rewarding part of our life is actually to say, you know what? I love myself. Okay, I'm not going to judge my emotions, right? I'm not going to judge myself anymore. I love myself. I do. And when we do that, we love other people. When I judge myself and say, okay, I hate myself for every time, I hate being jealous, then we're not loving ourselves. Okay, I hate my left side. This side just always give me pain. We're so good at separating us within and say, okay, these are okay, and those are evil, and these are just total trash, right? We're not loving ourselves. We're not kind to ourselves. Honestly, all of us, okay, our entire journey is to say, I love myself. Up to the point of our very last breath. That, to me, is a meaningful, purposeful journey. If we pursue physical health, at some point we're going to say, all this work, and it's still broken. I'm still in diapers. Yeah. Any question? So I know you're intern round, right? Or internship, right? So if you have this model and then you're addressing everything all at the same time, right? And then to me, if you have this model and you apply it to yourself, you're not going to sympathize with anybody. Automatically, not because you don't want to sympathize, but because you start to see things differently. Then you're not sympathizing. Automatically, not because you don't want to. Because you see everyone has a heart of gold. Right? And all they have to do is to love themselves. Right?
Yeah, and that part is not easy. It's not easy to persuade people to love themselves because they don't see it.
So the key is, do we? If we do, we will not say it's not easy. We may say it's not time, but I will continue.
Time, yes.
Okay?
We have to wait for the right time.
Right? And we don't know what time.
Yeah.
Right? You know,
Yes. Yes.
right? Like, honestly, you know, Nestor, you did it in almost like instantaneously. Honestly, we this clinic benefit dramatically with, you know, from your presence. Because you demonstrate to us how fast a person, when he's willing, right, and have the courage to try these stupid stuff, things change. And when you start to feel your body, you start to feel your emotion. When you start to feel and love your body, you start to feel and love your emotions. And you start to change your perspective.
Your whole life, you've been pounded one way. This is the way to live. This is, you know, this is right for you. Without even thinking about it.
That's right.
You just let somebody else guide you.
Yeah.
This is good. This is bad for you. This is good for you. Without even knowing that what was good was bad or bad was good.
Yeah. So we are so conditioned to trust experts.
I was in the hospital this weekend with a intestinal blockage, and I was laying there in pain. But that little process we had last week about love, pain, and stuff, it worked. I mean, it was scary. Like, it's just really working. I mean, it still hurt. You got to the point where it just started coming too fast, so I really couldn't control it anymore. But when the pains were far in between, it worked. I mean, because I got into an emergency, I didn't know what I had. And I laid there for 5 hours before they found a room. And they had taken the test, and nobody had really diagnosed what was happening yet. And they finally determined that. And it was really painful. But I think it would have been more painful if I didn't have the few tools that I had.
Yeah.
And the those tools I had did work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
Thank you.
I just, you know, shit, this is really working.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, sometimes you get this, and you go, yeah, okay, that's supposed to, you know, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Not for me, at least, or maybe somebody else, but it did work.
Yeah.
It was kind of scary.
Yeah. So to me, this stuff, right, is worthless and priceless at the same time, depending on who uses it. Right? If you use it and you see the results, it's priceless. Right? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think, like you said, the most important thing, you have to love yourself first.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
that for me, that was hard.
Yeah. 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 That's the conditioning we have, right? We judge, right? Yeah.
Because all your life here, is this a good person, is this a bad person? Oh, then where do I fall in that? You know, am I really that bad or that good? Or
Yeah.
if I didn't get here on time, I'm a bad person now.
Right.
And you start feeling that way.
Yeah. We're judged by our behaviors and words, right? So we're constantly being judged, right? Yeah. Hey guys, come on in. Yeah. Any comments, questions? Yeah, come on in. So we're going over the model, right? So the model, just recap a little bit, okay? So the model is we have, 5 senses, right? Ears, eyes and nose, tongue, and our body, okay? Body is actually a big part of it, okay? So all these receive external stimulus, okay? Let's say a traumatic event happens, okay? It goes through this, it comes down, okay? Enter our reptilian brain first, because we need to reflex. Okay, so reptilian brain is the fastest and has its reflex commands or reflex memories or reflex stuff. Okay, so that's why if we improve our balance and everything else, we actually improve the reflex part of ourselves. Right. So when you stand in front of this mirror and you start to walk just like this, you start to change this. Because otherwise your reflexes are locked up. Okay? Very different, right?
Right.
Yeah. So go through the reptilian brain, right? Based on reflex, generate commands. Okay. So if I'm going to hit a tree, right, and my reptilian brain is going like, okay, get the hands here so your head is not going to hit the windshield wiper, right? And I didn't have time, so my hands are like here, pow, it goes in, right? My whole life, this hand is not right. I just feel like this hand want to do something, but it's like, why? And there's a rigidity, right? There's a whole lot of problem with this one side, okay? And people, go through sexual trauma, for example, will pin down and couldn't move and right? And all, this entire arm is just not right, okay? Why? Because there's pending reptilian brain commands that needs to get executed. It doesn't matter when, it just needs to clear that queue, okay? Very interesting, right? So when you work on people and you feel, it's like, okay, either it's extremely loose or extremely tight. Okay, it doesn't have the suppleness. It doesn't have the sense that they're balanced. Okay. Then it goes into our limbic brain, which generates emotion. Okay, for further movement. Emotions are really just things to enable our motion. Okay, that's really what it is. Okay, so in martial art, when a person is really good, it's because they're very good at using this reflex and this body sense and everything else. Okay, they do things without, and this is under the this is subconscious. Okay, reptilian brain, limbic brain, we have no control because once we know, it's 0.8 seconds later. Okay, if somebody pushes you and you wait 0.8 seconds to respond, you're way too late.
Yeah.
Way too late. Yeah. Right? Okay, so it goes through the limbic brain. Right? And it goes to the midbrain, in my opinion, okay? This is just my model, okay? So it goes to the midbrain. If the midbrain is connected to our heart, okay? So the limbic brain generates emotions based on our triggers that were installed previously, okay? If, let's say, when I'm 9 years old, I learned there's no Santa Claus. Okay? And all of a sudden I have triggers that I do not trust my parents. So after that, everything they said, I have a question mark. Is it true? Is it real? Okay? Everything I do. Okay? And these triggers have three properties. Okay? They're persistent, they're protective, and they are what's G? Global. Okay? It's not because my parents or my dad, I found out my dad has been playing Santa Claus all these years. And I have this trigger. The only person I do not trust is my dad. No, I do not trust anybody. Okay? Triggers are global. Okay? They're persistent, meaning once it's installed, it's always there until we do some work to resolve it. Okay? They're protective. They're not evil. They're there to protect us. Okay? Yeah. So the midbrain has no memory or no instructions or anything like that. The midbrain is just connected to our heart. Okay? There's actually resonance from our heart that resonates with somewhere in the midbrain. So the midbrain and to the midbrain to heart communication is wireless. Okay? It's just through Wi-Fi, basically. Okay, so we have built-in Wi-Fi system. The midbrain does what's most empowering at the moment. Okay, it doesn't have any past or future. It doesn't do that. Okay, there's no right and wrong. It's just what's most empowering at the moment, and it comes through with a sense of clarity. It's like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. Why? Don't know. Okay? And normally that's the best answer. Okay? And where is it coming from? It comes from subconscious. So the midbrain, when we ask the question, what's the most empowering thing for me to do right now? it goes into the subconscious, goes through this, which has a lot of triggers for traumas and protections, but it also has all the wisdom. Okay? So when sage or people say, or enlightened people say, you know what? We have everything. Everybody has everything. That's what it is. Okay? We all have everything. Okay? But the question is, how do we get to it? If we continue to be in the left and right brain, we can only do what we think, what we know, what we believe is the right thing. That's when we get in trouble. We keep doing the right thing to, this hole is not deep enough. Okay, so we keep digging. Okay, right. So if the midbrain doesn't take the stimulus, the left and right brain does. So then we judge. Okay, so we have judgment, and the combination of all these responses alter our channel and gets feedback into our thought and our body. Okay? And then the stimulus can be removed, and this will continue. So when people have PTSD and they lay in bed and they couldn't sleep and right? They continue to feel this insecurity, life is not safe, or it's injustice, or the sense of righteousness, and just keep burning and burning and burning. In channel-wise, it's the gallbladder channel and the UV channels are not capable of going down to the toes anymore because they are looping, right? That's what happens. All of a sudden, we don't need any of these stimulus. Our eyes can be closed. There's absolute silence, but we have the thought keep going. And this will continue to stimulate this entire thing and generate more. And so this will get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, right? And our perspective, right? The sense of righteousness, for example, right, will get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Then it affects our channels even more, right? For example, righteousness basically causes a blockage right here. When people are righteous and you push here, they go, a lot of pain right here. Okay? When people are righteous, they can't eat because the energy that is supposed to go and flow into our heart, when our heart is filled with energy, we are kind and we are loving. When we are righteous, there's no kindness. Okay? We want to destroy that person. Righteousness, in my opinion, is the worst energy in the world. Okay? When I say worst energy, because it destroyed both sides. Okay? Both sides. It's not just destroy the other side. It destroys us inside. Okay? I actually have many righteous patients. Okay? And it's very obvious. Yes.
How do you explain, like, if you see someone that's like righteous, but they say they have no pain?
You just lightly touch it.
I touched it, but they said there's no pain, they feel good. Everywhere they feel good, which is kind of odd to me.
Okay, so another way to feel good, okay, is the blockage of the midbrain. Okay, people come in, they're very righteous, okay, but their body is soft, like cotton. Okay, you move, they move. You move, they move, right? And you press anywhere, it's just like, oh my goodness, it's just like a pillow. Their entire body feels like a pillow, okay? It's a blockage of the midbrain. They don't want to feel. There's dissociation. But when they reassociate, okay? So, see, those are highly cerebral people. They know what's right. They know what to do. When they see you, right, they say, oh, I need to relax. So all of a sudden, they are a pillow. You just feel like, my goodness, you have no joints. Okay?
So in a way, you can say they are good at camouflage.
Complete masking of their emotions. And they may be the nicest people, but internally they have a lot of anger.
And to reassociate, to eliminate the dissociation, what do we do?
So the key is, are they willing to reassociate? Okay? Honestly, that person actually came here. Okay, one time, I think Lilia was working on her, and she said Lilia's touch was not very good, right? She doesn't. It's really up to her, okay, to change how she feels about emotions and okay. So her, she's actually part of a organization that basically says all emotions are useless. Okay, so they suppress a lot of emotions, and the best way to suppress emotions is actually to cut off the do channel.
Wait, what do you mean an organization? Like, or she subscribes to like a thought?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Okay.
So they have like and she's one of the practitioners there. She teaches class, and so to me, a lot of times people in it's almost like in a religion, right? And they're practicing it. Right, and they're teaching it, right? They're in certain high position to enlighten other people or to illuminate other people, right? Man, they have a lot of these trouble because it's hard to, even acupuncturists, okay, with 30 years of experience, right? They experience what I do, but they're not willing to change at all. It's hard to get down from a pedestal and say, you know what? I don't know anything. That's what the midbrain does, okay? Our left and right brain says, I am established and I have reputation, right? And this is the right way to do it.
I know that feeling.
Right?
I deal with a lot of people like
Yeah.
that all the time.
Yeah, it's like, this is what I do, right? And, and look at all these results. Look at all my accolades, right?
I could show them right to their face and they'll still deny it.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? So, yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I do, honestly, that person want to see me and want me to work on her body. Okay, but I say I don't want to work on your body because it's not your body that's an issue. It's here, right? It's here. Until this person is willing to reassociate, to really say, okay, I'm going back to my body, right? I'm not going to work on her body. Yeah. So you will see in the clinic, right? And as an intern, people make an appointment, you have to see them, right? And you have to treat them, right? And you can treat them. Right? To me, the treatment will be to hold them. No needle, because if you put needle in there, they're gone. People who are highly dissociated, any perforation of the skin, they dissociate even further. Okay? So heat, right? Hold, gentle,推拿, right? Which you do very well, right? Eventually, and you connect to her heart. You don't want her to change. Okay? You see this, but you're not pushing this. You continue to be your own lighthouse. Okay? Remove the word easier or harder from your vocabulary, right? You just maintain your own light, and you do your own thing, right? And at some point, if she's, to me, it's really this, okay? People who are highly dissociated, they're very, very sensitive to expectation. They're very sensitive to their environment. They know what to behave based on who they see and whatever, right? So when they sense and sense and sense and sense and sense, it's like, Dean, this person doesn't expect anything from me. I don't need to have all these protection, all these walls anymore, right? I can come back to my body. Okay? So for highly dissociated people, I'll get back to you, okay? Sorry. Their gallbladder channel and their UV channels are way up here, right? Because they're constantly monitoring the environment, constantly. They may be the nicest person, and they don't look agitated at all, but they're constantly monitoring. So when you hold their feet, right, or you use, just come over here and get the tuning fork, right, and you put on, this point, GB, whatever, right, 41, right, you just do this, okay? They may have a headache because their channels are going like, I'm not going down there, okay? We cannot, we will have to be vigilant. Actually, because I study martial art, right? So I don't want to name names because you guys know him. But we did that, right? I immediately started to have a headache, immediately, because his life is not safe. So for that channel to even go down, boom, it's not safe, right? And I say, it's okay, just embrace that headache, right? You're in a safe place now, right? So what you want to do is provide that safe place, okay? And always make sure you close the session, okay? Because you don't want that person to go out and feel safe. You want to close it, because otherwise that person may go into, heightened emotional state, including panic attack. Because that person's perspective does not allow relaxation, right? It's like a person doesn't feel safe, can't sleep, and all of a sudden, CBD or whatever, right? And sleep like a baby, right? 3 days later, it's just like out of control, panic. Because the perspective, okay? The perspective is always monitoring, right? The triggers and this perspective are always monitoring the body, right? If this is not safe, bullets are shooting over our head, and you're sleeping like a baby, it ups all the stress hormones, right? So go back to hold. So there might be ankle injuries, very possible, okay? There could be bunions, okay? There could be tightness around these areas, okay, that blocks the gallbladder channel and UV channel in the first place. There could be sacrum, injuries, right? Could be neck injuries, right? Resolve those, right? But just be mindful that this person is going to go through this up and down. When you put this person in a relaxed state, there's going to be conflict with this. That's when you can introduce this. Okay. When that person says, you know what? I come here, I feel so good. I go home, I feel so bad. Right? And the body starts to trust you because you can touch and you don't feel like it's a pillow anymore. Right? That means the body is okay with you now. So every touch you make is a communication. Isn't it cool? This is pretty cool, right? Yeah. So we talk theory, but the movement is the same. Okay. No judgment. So when we have this idea, we have this approach, right? We don't put this on another person. We presented it and say, would you like to try it? Right? So as an intern, you see people, right? For my clinic, I actually make a decision. I say, you know what? If you like to try this, we can work together. Otherwise, we cannot work together. It's not because I don't want to work with you, but because we need to work together. Okay? I cannot say, I have this perspective, but your perspective is completely different than mine, or in the opposite direction. Okay? If I say everyone has a heart of gold, you say, no, people are evil. Then we cannot work together. Right? Yeah. Come on in. Yeah. Yes, Josh.
Oh, sorry, I wanted to kind of go back to the stimulus.
Yes.
So that's thoughts, body, and then EE ENT.
So eye, ear, nose, tongue.
Okay, so
So basically the five senses,
the five senses.
right? Including body, right? Five senses: sight, sound, right? Taste or smell, taste, and physical sensation. Yeah.
So people with
The,
dissociation.
let me.
Okay.
The physical sensation actually has two, both. Okay, inside and outside. Okay. So if I do this, that's from outside, right? But internally, we have thalamus in the midbrain also sense all our internal physical state. When we dissociate, it's actually the blockage, which is in the midbrain, right? Then we dissociate from certain parts of our body. It's like we don't feel it, right? And when we truly heal it, or when we connect back to it, we actually feel a lot of pain,
Yes.
right? Very interesting, right? Yeah. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
Okay. So people who experience dissociation, they often think it's like, oh, I need aromatherapy, I need a massage.
Yeah.
But really, it's like the thoughts that are disconnecting them from. They're like feelers, sensors. Like, what would make them safe?
Because we're trying to avoid pain, basically, right? So if I roll my ankle, when I'm hiking, for example, right, and it's getting dark and it's getting cold, right, and I hear, there's wolves around, right? I'm gonna completely dissociate from that injury,
Oh, okay.
right? So it's a life-saving. Honestly, dissociation is a life-saving channel mode. Okay, we don't dissociate because, and some people find this to say, for example, if I have constant abuse when I was a child, I have to dissociate, right? I mean, it's a survival mechanism, right? The issue is when we get stuck, when we continue to dissociate, right? Then we run into this loop, right? Then our body is this and our emotions are that. We see the world differently, right? Yeah. Nope. Okay. I want to talk about the last mode. Okay. The last mode is called pause. Okay. So we mentioned dissociation. So dissociation and pause are very similar. Okay, but they're kind of different as well. Okay. So pause is when we are in mortal danger. Okay, when we're on the line of life and death. Okay, the best analogy I have is actually a mouse being chased by a cat. Okay, so the mouse is first in fight and flight, right? Trying to stay away from the cat, right? But the moment it's caught and the cat's claw perforated mouse skin, okay, maybe even puncture a artery, the mouse goes into pause. Okay, so all of a sudden, it's dead, but it's not dead. Okay, it goes into a pause mode where, honestly, it's in an instant. Okay, so when we learn that channel change based on the weather and the season and the month and the year and channel changes based on the instant. I mean, channel changes within a split second. It has to. Okay, the mouse gets this, and boom, all the channel has to change right away. It's not like, oh, it's summer, I need to wait until spring for that mode to kick in. Okay, boom, it goes in, right? All our channels goes into the do channel, goes into the spine, basically right here. Okay, all our energy actually goes in here. Okay, actually it doesn't go through our midbrain because when a mouse does this, the midbrain, if midbrain has energy, the mouse is actually very hopeful. Okay, very curious, very loving, very friendly. Okay, no, when we're in life and death, no, right? Boom, goes in. Okay, the heart rate goes way down. So in fight and flight, the heart rate is high, right? Because we need all the energy, we need the blood flow. Okay. In pause mode, the heart rate goes down. Okay. Parkinson people is actually in pause. Parkinson people are very proud of their blood pressure. So, oh, my blood pressure is perfect. 100/60. My blood pressure is never high. Even lower. Their heart rate is like 60 or 40 or something like that. Very, very low. Why? If an artery is punctured and your heart rate is high and blood pressure is high, goes like a fire hydrant. Save life, save time. Isn't that, I mean, this is unbelievable. When I learned this, that we have a mode called pause, okay? And the pause mode is to save our life, right? I honestly, I was like I was just blown out of my mind. It's like, oh my goodness, such, I don't know. I mean, it's like there's so many layers of protections for our body and soul, okay? So the energy actually comes in here, right? Waiting for two things. Either like we're going to come back to life, so the energy goes all the way back to everywhere else in our body. So you see this mouse, right? It's like this, right? And the cat, if it's well fed and it's just looking for something to play, it goes, it's so boring, right? And the mouse eventually, through these senses, the mouse is completely rigid and everything else, but the hearing, right? The feeling, the body sensation is the cat's still there. It's smell, right? And everything else is still active. It's still trying to figure out, is the environment safe? Is the cat still around? Okay, so getting out of the pause, there are 5 steps. First is the environment safe? Again, goes back to this, right? If a person continues to feel, I'm not in a safe environment, you cannot get out of the pause. Human, animal like a mouse, automatically judge if the environment is safe or not based on these 5 senses. Human has this mind. We have thoughts, that dictates life is not safe, even though it's perfectly safe from every aspect. But we're not safe. So an animal will automatically get out of pause by doing what? The environment, is it the environment safe? Is the cat still around? No, the cat is not around. Environment is safe, check, okay? And then it activates its thalamus and say, okay, am I safe? Do I still have enough blood? Is my head is still attached to my body? If it is, check. So outside environment is safe, inside environment is safe. Now it can come back to life. So what it does is it actually does this. So if you ask an Indian person, it's like, we go out, have lunch tomorrow, okay? Yeah, sure. That's what they do, They don't go like this, This turns on the parasympathetic nerve, the vagus nerve, It's right here, So turn on the vagus nerve, It's going to breathe. Because when we're in pause, breathing cannot be detected. Makes sense, right? It's beautiful. I mean, it's just marvelous, right? So breathing, right? And then the whole body shake, Like a dog out of water. You just shake the entire spine, right? Getting the energy, the channels that go whoosh into the spine, redistribute to everywhere it's supposed to be. And the mouse goes, it goes away, right? Human, oftentimes, fail the first step and fail the second step. And they get stuck in pause. So Parkinson is one of the illness or disease or Parkinson disorder, I guess. That's pause. So in pause, what happens is the stomach channel that's supposed to go from here all the way down to in between our second and third toe actually goes back. It's supposed to flow this way, actually goes back. Why? Because then we are like a clamshell. I don't know if you ever have a chance to open up somebody who is 3 years old and have a seizure, for example. You can't open this person up. When the channel goes backwards, the strength is like, superhuman, superheroes. So you hear these stories like, a mom, get the child out of the fire, right? And move the piano and move the, whatever, right? I was like, it's like this big of a lady. I was like, how can you possibly do all these things? When your channel goes backwards, when you're in pause mode, you're so strong. So honestly, I met people with pause, right? They're skinny, they're wiry, but they are strong. Honestly, the strength is unbelievable, right? Because their channels literally are moving backwards. Okay, they're using a different set of energy. They're not using dopamine. They're using, I think, what's called norepinephrine. Maybe you know this. Okay, so norepinephrine is used in the brain to override dopamine. So in the normal mode, when our midbrain is working and we have smooth motion, these are controlled by dopamine. Okay, I want to move my hand, and the hand moves in infinite amount of steps. Because this is moving by dopamine. Okay. In pause mode, everything is a command. My hand needs to go from here to here. Okay. So their movements are just not quite right. Their walking is like, okay, this leg goes here, this leg goes here, this leg goes here. Okay. It's very robotic because it's literally from here, issuing a command to the body. Very interesting, right? Yeah. So this semester or the last semester, we actually have the opportunity to treat a Parkinson patient, right? So you can see her movement is like this. She cannot, we mentioned this, and this is from JJ, okay, because JJ has Parkinson. When she lays on the bed as a side sleeper, she want to go to the other side, she has to, okay? It's not like you sleep on this side and you turn. Okay, there's no turning. It's
You have to like throw yourself.
It's a throwing yourself. It's a command. Okay, yeah. So how do we get out of pause, right? So getting out of pause is the external environment safe? Is the internal environment safe? It's the same. Okay. So then we go into this left and right brain knowledge, the worldview, right? Then we go into our triggers. So Parkinson is curable, absolutely. Okay, it's not a incurable disease. Okay. So that's, and we have a sleep mode. Okay, so let me just mention sleep. Okay, so we learn in Chinese medicine school the Du channel goes from here all the way here to the top of the head, right, and then go down. That is sleep. When we are asleep, that's how the Du channel is supposed to run. Okay. When we are awake, the Du channel goes, through basically the same path, enter here, energize our midbrain, come out of here, the third eye. Okay, and then continue down, inside. Okay, not from the front, continue inside. Okay, enters the tube. Okay, and goes back in. Okay, so if this is the Ren channel and that's the Du channel, they both come up. Okay, Ren channel actually enters the mouth. Okay, and then circulates in, on this tube. Okay, Du channel actually goes through our midbrain, come out of here, energize our midbrain, so we have clarity, and we're connected to our heart, and we feel hopeful. We are curious. We can love and be loved. Okay, and we have autoimmune system working, and we have auto function working for us. Otherwise, we don't breathe very well. So how do you spot a person who has pause and dissociation? Right? You talk to them. If you just feel like, man, you don't breathe at all, oftentimes they're in pause or this. Okay, yeah. Yes, yes, please.
So when a person is in pause mode, can I say he or she is more sensitive for those sense. Are they more sensitive, or are they like hide the sense? The sense function stops, or even more sensitive?
Okay. They are sensitive without being sensitive. Okay, you cannot tell if they're sensitive. You may feel like they have no sensation at all.
But they might, or
But they have this internal sense. They're still trying to figure out. Okay. So when a mouse is like this, right? Does it have senses? You can kick it, you can burn it, right? You can yell it. It's still doing this, as if there's no response to external stimulus, right? But it continues to monitor the environment to access whether it's safe or not to come back to life.
Because I'm thinking the people has car accident or something like a traumatic brain injury. Because I have a patient who has post-concussion syndrome. I think that's the same with my friend's daughter. They are sensitive to the lights.
Yes.
It's like maybe 2 months later, after the car accident, sensitive to the light, sensitive to the noise, sensitive to the movement. So that's why I ask if
Yes.
in this situation,
Yeah.
I think that's the pause situation, right?
Pause dissociation
Pause
or dissociate.
or
So my daughter actually, my youngest daughter Emily, she actually had a concussion. Okay.
recently.
Yeah, recently, maybe 2-3 months ago. And then after that, she didn't think very much, right? She hit a car door, and and then the entire next week she was agitated. She was dizzy, headache, and right? And she's like, "Oh my goodness, I have this condition." And then afterwards, she didn't have, that condition stopped. Okay, but then she started to have these agitation, very, very sensitive to a lot of things. Okay. So the same thing with pause. So the resolution for pause. Let's just go into this, okay? Because this is important. But honestly, I learned how to resolve pause for 2 years before I was able to do it, because it needs a lot of cultivation for me to feel comfortable doing this. Okay, but I want to describe the steps. Okay, so for my daughter, it's like, okay, so let's say this is her. Okay, she hit here. Okay, she hit the car door here. Okay, she actually felt her brain hit the other wall there. Okay, so what happens is we hit, and there's a bounce back. A lot of times, the real trauma is actually here, because this is hard, but the real bounce back is actually here. Okay. So what we do is to say, okay, can you, again, connect to loving kindness, right? Have a sense of purpose. We don't know why you have a concussion, but there's might be a purpose, okay, for us to truly get into ourselves, feel it, instead of say, oh, I hate these symptoms, okay? So I get her to connect to loving kindness, have a purpose. She has a heart of gold and everything else, right? And get her to imagine the tip of her nose being dark or light. Which way is easier? Okay? So this is association, okay? If every part that we associate it properly, it will be easier for us to imagine it being either light, bright, warm, colorful, or something like that. Okay? Everything that we dissociate or impause, we just feel like I can't connect to it, or it's a lot easier to imagine being dark, or it's just like dark purple or something like that. Something more, I don't like to use the word negative, but something more negative. Okay, it's like when the midbrain is not going and it's not connect properly, it's like we don't have hope. Okay, we don't want to see that. We don't want to touch it. We don't want this. Okay, so you can imagine pause and dissociation. It's like, okay, we in our brain or in our thalamus, or we have every connection to every part of our body and emotions, everything. We can feel. We actually can feel everything, but we filter them out as if we remove that part of the map. You know, it's like we have Google Maps for every part of every cell, for example, right? Or every part, for example, like my ankle, right? But because of that injury, I remove my ankle from this Google Map. So if I say, okay, because I need to go down the hill, because wolves are howling, okay, and I need to go down. Okay, I don't care whether it's painful or not. I need to save the rest of my life, right? Makes sense, right? Okay, so any part that we dissociate, sometimes people do dissociate from their nose if they've been hit. Okay, this is not uncommon. Okay, but if you don't see something visible around the nose, if the nose is reasonable and it's not crooked or something like that, right? Imagine the tip of the nose. Most people will say, "Oh, it's light up like the Rudolph, the reindeer." Okay, so then you establish a connection. So the person is capable of saying, "Oh, I can connect to my nose." Okay, then it's a lot easier to connect to other parts of the body. Right. So for my daughter, I basically says, "Okay, can you, after a few things, right? Can you go into your brain and find a part that a lot easier to imagine being dark than light?" Okay, and then she found it, and she said, "Oh, it's there. You can probably do this too. Okay, you probably have something." Okay, and then I asked her to pay attention to that spot. Okay, wrap her imaginary love and hands around it, and feel how it looks. Okay, and she says it's dark, right? It's kind of purple, and it's moving. Anything that moves is pause. Because in pause, the question is, are we safe? Is the cat still around? Am I okay to live? That's the movement. Okay, the movement may feel like it's the light comes on and off, okay, or something that's cloudy and kind of change shape or something. I mean, they just feel like there's something that's moving, okay. So in Parkinson patients, they have this shaking, right? It's actually the question is like, are we safe? Are we safe? Are we safe? It mirrors the question inside. Okay, so when we pause and we look inside, it's like there's something that's just like doing this. Okay, and then what we do is we say, okay, can you just really, really focus on that and either tell me or you connect to the grandma that loves you very much, but now it's somewhere else, right? Either ask yourself or ask your grandma, are you going to die from this in the next 2 to 3 minutes? Because that is really the question. Okay? Aboriginal people or tribes know how to handle this. Modern science doesn't know how to handle this. We measure the blood pressure, we measure all the vitals, and say, oh, you're good. Okay? You have concussion symptoms, you take these medications to slow it down or sedate it, then you're good. The question remains. Okay? So I got my daughter to do this, right? And then I asked her, are you going to die in the next 2 to 3 minutes? Right? She said, Dad, what the? Right? I was like, just answer the question. I said, no, of course not. Right? Then I asked her a few more times, actually, until she said, oh, of course not. Right? Then I asked her to look at that part again. It's different. It's bright. So that question needs to be answered, not just from left and right brain. It's like, of course, I'm not going to die from any vibration in my brain, right, in the next 2 to 3 minutes. Not from here, but from here and here. Until this person laughs, like you're, so what a kind of ridiculous question, you know. I know you're a weird person. Now I really confirm it, right? Because then their midbrain is activated. They have to think this is so ridiculous and not so wrong or makes no sense. You see the difference? When the heart feels it's either funny or, you know, normally this starts, you know, then they go, you know, then they go through the rest of the steps. Okay, get them to wiggle, get them to do this and that. Okay.
That's very, very interesting because I think that answers the other question I was going to ask, because I was thinking 言而必则生意, but because we human have B and T 生意, but why we already know, we should know it is already safe, but we still
That's right.
sensitive, but we bring something back.
Yeah.
To, I don't know if I explained.
You did it perfect. That's
So
exactly. We spent 2 hours explaining this, and you just explained this in 2 seconds.
We bring back the B and T, so for E and T will be fine.
That's right.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we feel like we don't have any more external stimulus, right? But we're still stuck. Right. So that's why Parkinson drugs or Parkinson research are invalid, because they work on animals. Okay, they disrupt the animals and they block, for example, the dopamine, right? So the animals will exhibit kind of like Parkinson's symptoms, and they develop drugs based on that. Animals are not capable of Parkinson, because we can do it. Human can do this. Animals are not capable of doing this. Animal doesn't have this. And it's beautifully designed, right? If I'm an antelope in Africa, right, and we get chased by lions, you know, every day, right? If I maintain this and go through this loop, you know, I can't even graze. I can't, you know, it's like I won't be able to function. And this pause mode is so, I mean, if you think about it, all the animals in the wild are basically eaten alive, but they have no pain, because all their energies are, they, you know, there's no pain. So even people, right, going through accidents, right, catastrophic accidents. You know, I have this lady, you know, she had, you know, hit when she was crossing a street. Her spine was broken in 3 different places. And she said absolutely no pain at that time. She was actually out of her body looking at herself, and it's like, oh my goodness, the skirt should not be there, you know. And this is all reasonable from a channel standpoint. So out-of-body experience is really, our channels are actually not in our body, are out of our body. So our conscious is actually out of body. We can see things. I mean, many people have this experience when they have surgeries, when they have heart surgeries, or when they have whatever, and they're taking, you know, being, you know, they're out, right? But they see everything, they smell everything, you know. And from a channel standpoint, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So to me, the key really is have this picture in mind, right? To me, the hardest part for us as practitioners is we want to do something, right? But if these are not aligned properly, to me, it's like, okay, we want to work on, we know how to take care of this tree, so we only take care of this tree. But there's a forest there, okay? Yeah. 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 So when you have patients like that, congratulations. Okay, so to me, it's like if you have patients like this, like your patient, right, dissociated, right, and that's great because that's why we get together and share information like this. Okay, and I really believe that we're going to see what we're supposed to see. Okay, we're not learning this or experiencing these for no reason. Yes.
So I kind of have like a interesting scenario.
Yeah, please.
Where like I'll take care of patients like on a psychiatrical, so they're kind of like it's kind of like, oh, if they don't consent, then I have to restrain them, right? So I don't like to do that. So like
if they don't consent, you cannot restrain them.
If they do not consent, then like
you cannot restrain them.
Then we will restrain them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So, like, I had a patient that was just like really, the auntie was in the room, really trying to like, assure them, and he was just like going back and forth, like, is this okay? Is this okay? So I just sort of like stayed in the room with him and just like, it's kind of like, was like, yeah, no, I'm qualified to do this. And took some time.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I was in the room with him for maybe about 20 minutes before he finally like got down. So is that like a sense of like pause and association where it took a while? Because I just kind of started emphasizing. He's like, oh, who's this? I'm like, oh, this is just the safety officer. He's just making sure we're all safe,
Yeah. So when you get into psychiatric things, right, to me there's early and there's late, okay? Early means they start to have these dissociation, they start to have pause, right? They start to have reptilian brain commands, right? And they literally feel like there's there are multiple people within the body that's trying to do different things, right? Because when you have reptilian brain command painting, and your hand want to do this, right? It's very, very strange, right? It's like there's an impulse to do something, or it's like, where is it coming from? Okay. And when these things are not understood by other people, right? And you say, oh, life is safe, and you worry too much, and right? So we're not honoring how we're feeling, right? We're not honoring our emotion. We're not honoring our painting reptilian brain commands, right? And we're asked to be controlling ourselves, right? So we start to block this. Start to block our heart. Right? We start to use highly, from a brain standpoint or channel standpoint, this gets into a loop, right? And we have something wrong, right? So this becomes a feedback loop, right? And then drugs are introduced, right? Then brain cells are damaged, right? So then the cognitive function, the conscious function that we need, right, to make sense out of our environment, right, and to make sense of doing what's most empowering, start to get damaged, right?
Yeah.
Right. So then the question is, what do we do?
Yeah.
Right? What's the most empowering thing we can do? Right? So for you to be in that situation, the key for you is, honestly, be a lighthouse. Connect to their heart of gold. There's a reason why they're in their state. We don't know why. We don't need to know why. Right? But if we maintain this connection to their heart of gold, right? To me, that's important. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you capture it's emergency room, and they like, oh, we need this blood to check your medicine levels. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so they're normally under a lot of sedation. But the problem with sedation, similar to CBDs, right, is when this is not safe, and you're sedated, you're going to up all your stress hormone.
Yeah, there's going to be they're going to try to correct it, right?
They're going to try to correct it. They need to go back to that bullets shooting over your head state, right? They cannot feel comfortable. Right? But the more agitated we are, the more we want to be comfortable. So you see that's to me that's really the underlying reason for addiction. Right? We try to escape from this, so we want this, but because we use this, we want to do that even more, and then it builds the cycle. Right? Yeah. So what's interesting is this whole society setup is actually to block all these. Right? Our entire society is basically right now is set up to do this. Right? Be happy, don't be angry. Right? Emotion we need to manage. Right? Since we're 5 or 4 or 3. Right? So we have to block this. Right? In order to block this, we have to block that. Then we're not using our heart, we're using left and right brain. We always do the right thing, or try to do the right thing. And when we are not capable of doing the right thing, we normally resist so hard, we're actually doing all the wrong things, which is, again, still in this domain, right? We're rebellious, right? We want anarchy, right? Or something like that, right? Why? Because we're disconnected from here, right? Is it good or bad? But to me, it has its purpose. Because we'll be so chaotic, right, that we need a different way out. Right? Our loved ones are in such trouble, we need a different way out. Right? So to me, even suffering to me has its purpose. Well, I'm not saying suffering is good or bad, but it has its purpose. Right? So the key really is, to me, is like, okay, can we maintain being a lighthouse? Can we still, everyone has a heart of gold? Or there's so many of these cruel or whatever behaviors, so, people are evil. When we think along that line, we actually make the situation worse. So being a lighthouse is, to me, is important. And to me, it's like, if we have one person that are willing to embark on this journey of being a lighthouse, right, it changes wherever we are. Whatever you're interacting with, right? And people are seeking this. It's like, how can you maintain who you are in this crazy environment? Then we have an opportunity to share, right? So when people are dissociated and everything else, what we do is we are not concerned about that person's condition, but connect to that person's heart of gold. I honestly have people walk in, just for one time. I actually have a person coming here to see me. Sometimes I have people just want to check me out. Okay, they hear this and I explain this and say, okay. They left, right? 2 years later, they came back after a stroke or something like that, right? Suffering, and I come back and say, John, you know what? I heard this. I was laughing at you. Do this, explain this to me again, right? I said, none of this time is wasted. Okay? So a lot of times I know, like, okay, I can present this from my heart, right? I'm basically just throwing a stone in the pond, and it kind of causes a ripple. Whether the ripple does anything or not, to me, it's just be a lighthouse. Right? Yeah. So you have all these opportunities, right, to observe, to cultivate, right? Take full advantage of it. Yeah. Yes.
Can we use the car accident case to describe what will be different? The patient, what will they look different in pulse and the dissociation mode?
Okay. So car accident. If it's the driver versus the passenger, it might be different. Mm-hmm. Okay. If it's a passenger and if it's a young child, for example, right, there could be a lot of distrust. Okay. Previously, this child may trust the parents or the mom or the dad, but after the accident, no trust.
So that's disassociation?
That's basically this. Right. Yes.
So that's basically my niece and my grandniece were driving, and a drunk driver T-boned them at an intersection. They ran the light, and they hit my niece and grandniece. Mm-hmm. My grandniece, when she tries to go with dad, couldn't go with dad for a while. Mm-hmm. She would be there for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, freak out, need mommy. So my niece would have to go back, pick her up, and all that kind of stuff. She's slowly worked that out, but basically that's how it is. Yeah. So even though that's my dad and I love my dad, couldn't be with him. I need mommy because mommy was there for me. That's her comfort blanket now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of, I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of trigger installed, right? There's this. There's a sense that, okay, this person, because I cannot trust, and I need to stay away from this person, right? So there's a lot of protection over there, right? So like in that case, right, or this severe sense that this closing down, right? So when we don't feel safe, we're actually very isolated, okay? So the loop is like this, right? So a person is hypersensitive, right? Because they want to avoid any danger, right? Hypersensitive. So it goes through this loop, and the body sensation is you can't even touch that person anymore, okay? Again, hold the feet, okay? Hold the feet without, I shouldn't say without, hold the feet with loving kindness connection. Purely loving kindness connection. Then the person has a sense to come back out. Okay? If you have any expectation, the person will actually close down, which is sympathy, right? So everybody around that person want to sympathize. Say, you are okay now. Okay, that doesn't do anything to here. Because it's really in the subconscious. Right? Yeah. So to access the subconscious, when we are compassion, right? Compassion, the best definition I've heard of compassion is the absence of judgment. Okay? So we don't really define it. Nobody can define what compassion is, but we can define what compassion is not. Okay? Or close to it, right? No judgment. When we don't judge, don't expect, don't do anything, right? It's like, can I just please hold you? Without any, expectation. I just want to connect to you. So, car accidents, right? Life and death situation, a lot of times it's a sense of disconnect, right? It's like all of a sudden, it's like, I'm going to die, right? We felt like we're surrounded by people who will, protect us and everything else. All of a sudden, that sense is gone, right? And we're free falling, right? It is very scary, yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah, but from a channel standpoint, from a connection standpoint, as practitioners or as parents or as friends or as whatever, right? What can we do? What's most empowering? So to me, the key is if we sympathize, we're going to remind that person even deeper. Yeah. Cool? Cool. All right. Let's do some work, okay? Let's put people on the table and shall we?
How you been doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.